Hey guys, this is Ryan Denson, also known as the Boston Beer Guy. I hope you're doing well and having an excellent Friday. I want to welcome you on to this week's episode of Frosty Boi Fridays, where we'll shotgun a Bud Light and then we'll rate a craft beer.
Frosty Boi Friday!
This episode, as always, is going to be presented by Proof Somerville. I want to welcome on very special guest, head brewer of Progression Brewing, Todd Sullivan. Todd, thanks for joining.
What's up, guys? How are you? Thanks for having me.
Of course, I appreciate you coming on. So, Todd, do you mind giving us a quick rundown and a history of Progression and kind of what you do there?
Sure. Progression was a kind of a. It was actually really funny. So, two classmates, two Amherst High class grads. One was Drew Starkweather, who was class of '84. And he started a company called Drew's Organics, which was a salad dressing company. I guess for years he had been looking for somebody to team up with because he really loved craft beer. He was really into like California IPAs, Western United States IPAs, but he couldn't find the right person. And then I was actually looking with another classmate of mine to start a brewery in Amherst, and we just hooked up with a mutual friend, and he liked what I had done and created over the years. I've been brewing for 26 years professionally. I owned my own brewery for 11 years.
Wow.
And so we basically were kind of a perfect match. He is the epitome of what you would want as a CEO. He knows all about he orders the grain, the malt, the hops, make sure that the paychecks are paid, make sure the taxes are paid, make sure everything gets done. And I just create beer, which is exactly awesome. What I want to do. So we're like a perfect marriage. We barely even talk right now. We have one half an hour meeting every Wednesday. And we talk about what we're going to brew next week, what we have in mind, what we're talking about for ideas of new beers or whatever. But we started in November 2 years ago, and everything was going absolutely fantastic until COVID. So COVID happened, and we kind of pivoted and went in a different direction, and we really focused on getting beer out to the local market as well as across the state. And we're doing super, super well in the distributed market. Of course, the tap room, people are afraid. They don't want to be close to each other. So the tap room sales have declined as they have across the United States.
Yeah.
So people aren't paying $7 a pint, $6 a pint, and that's where our number one profit was. So we really kind of had to pivot, and but now I'm creating lots of new beers, lots of new styles, and really enjoying my time as being the head brewer, the artist, and creating new stuff.
Awesome. Well, that's a great introduction, and it's really cool how you and the CEO sort of blend together to make wonderful beer. And I love Progression because you guys are really focused on New England styled IPAs, and those are my bread and butter. So I got a few questions for you. We're gonna pour these beers and we're gonna try them out, but first we're gonna shotgun. So we'll get everything ready for that right now.
All right, I'm ready for that. Wait, so I haven't done this in I got a pair of scissors, and I got PBR, which is one of my favorite beers of all time, believe it or not. So what do we do? Just shove the scissors in? Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go.
There we go. You did it. Awesome. All right. When you're ready, let's do it. Cheers.
1, 2, 3.
You got a tall boy. Oh, boy.
All right, that was great.
Oh boy, that's always tough. That is always a good way to start the first beer of the day. Awesome. Well, so Todd and I, we're actually going to be reviewing Connect the Dots. Now, this is actually so far one of my favorite beers that you guys make. It is a New England style IPA hopped with Citra and Simcoe hops. So, Simcoe hops. So it's one of those things where, these are versatile. You find a lot of beers that have this sort of combination, and I feel like you give it a really good spin. So I think from there we should pour our beers and start chatting.
All right, sounds good.
Awesome. So my first question I have for you is, you said you've been brewing professionally for 26 years. You owned your own brewery for 11. How did you get into brewing?
Well, let's see. So I went to college in Florida for my first 2 years, which Florida, in my opinion, is one of the worst places on the planet. Like very unartistic, very uncool. But I went there and I was really, really into surfing. That was my whole thing. Like I got accepted to Pepperdine in California, where I was obsessed with surfing when I was a kid. I was from Massachusetts. I read Surfer magazine from the time I was like, 5 years old, and I was obsessed with skateboarding, surfing, snowboarding, blah, blah, blah. So I really wanted to get out to somewhere where I could surf. So I wanted to go to California. I was the first of 5 kids, and my mom said, if you send our son to California, I'm going to divorce you, to my dad. So I ended up going to Florida. So I went to school for commercial art, industrial design. My background has always been artist, being an artist. I was very good with pen and ink drawing when I was a child. I knew from like first grade on that I wanted to be an artist. Mm-hmm. So when I was a kid, I collected beer cans, which was kind of a really, really weird thing. I met this kid, Ben Quick, that lived down the road from my house, and he had a beer can collection. And so I lived in Amherst, Mass, where I am right now. And I just started to go around to all the trash cans with my brother, and we ended up with having like 30 different cans. My dad came into the room and he's like, "What the hell are you guys doing?" And I'm like, "We're collecting beer cans." And then so my dad got into it. And by the time I graduated high school, our entire room, we had 7,000 cans of beer. So then I went to college.
Shit, that's a lot.
And I was like obsessed with it. So I always drew like art, Todd Sullivan beer, blah, blah, blah. And then I met these kids when I was in college. It was almost like it was meant to be. They were 2 surfers. They were 2, older guys. Sorry, the shotgun's getting to me.
Hey, you're good. I do it through the entire thing.
It's okay. So 2 older guys and the cool kids down the hall. Yeah. And I went in their room and, we were all drinking beer at the time, drinking the shittiest beer that we could get, the most, the least expensive beer. I was drinking Meisterbrow and PPR and whatever else. And I went to their room and they had a 5-gallon carboy and they were fermenting beer. And I was like, what the hell is that? And it was amazing. And so they made a porter. And I was like, this is really, really good. And so I designed a label. And I remember my freshman year in college, I was 19 years old, and I came home with the beer that we created in the dorm room with my label. And it was like Sullivan Porter. I forget what the actual name of it was. And my dad just said, you didn't make this. And I was like, yes, I did. And then I was just obsessed with it. I just am completely obsessed with it. I graduated college. I was going back and forth between business and art, and I couldn't decide really what I wanted to do, but I finished with an art degree. And then I just started volunteering at Cambridge Brewing in Cambridge, Mass.
Oh, no way.
And yep. And then I got a job as an assistant brewer for Lowell Brewing Company, which is now Lowell Beer Works. I trained under Paul McErlane, who's one of the biggest, one of the most educated master brewers in the United States right now. And then Dan Paquette, who formed Pretty Things. I don't know if you remember that guy, but Pretty Things was a beer from the 90s and early 2000s that was just really cutting edge. Yeah. And so I stayed on board with those guys and moved out to Western Mass, bought a house. And then
I'm kind of losing
my own brewery.
Yep.
Oh, you locked me?
We're still good. You're kind of coming in and out, but you're okay. You're good now.
Okay. So then I bought Pioneer, and I ran and owned that for 11 years. Okay. It was great. I had great ups and downs there. There was really high points and really low points, but the biggest thing, I made during Oktoberfest, I made, tens of thousands of dollars and everything was great. And I would buy a motorcycle, roll into February where I would make nothing. And so I wasn't really good being an art major to balance that out. So that's where I met up with Drew, my partner, and he's got a much better pulse on the business side. And I've got a much better pulse on the art side and the creation side. And that's how progression happened.
Wow, that's pretty amazing how that kind of that works, which is pretty cool. And the whole, you know, from pretty much when you were a kid all the way into now. I mean, you started just collecting beer cans, and it just got you and brought you to this passion, which is pretty incredible. Yeah, I'll let you take a sip of your beer. So my next question I have for you, and again to all the people watching, sorry about the technical difficulties, Wi-Fi and whatnot. So in terms of progression, I mean, you're here now. What is your favorite beer to brew at Progression?
Oh, it's definitely New England IPAs.
Okay.
I believe that, you know, I've been doing it for a while. I don't mean to toot my own horn, but I am going to toot it. I was the first brewer in the world to call a beer a New England IPA on a can.
Really?
I was the creator. Yeah, I was the creator of Trailblazer out of Connecticut. So that was one of the first IPAs. It was really kind of going head to head against Julius and, you know, other New England IPAs at the time. It was one of the first hazy beers that people had seen. You know, everybody remembers Hill Farmstead, Heady Topper, and then of course Treehouse came along in Trillium. And Treehouse, all the guys there I'm super friends with because I was in Sturbridge, they were in Munson and you know, the surrounding area. So I know all the guys there. I'm very close with.
You got the Treehouse right here.
Those guys, but yeah, and so nobody had seen a hazy beer. Or not any, and it's definitely New England IPAs, and mixing it up in any way I can, you know, creating different water chemistry, using different malt and adjuncts and whatever else I'm going to do to create different styles. But really, I mean, in my opinion, it's really big on the water chemistry and, you know, of course, the hop choice, hop selection, and you know, the amount of time that you're spending dry hopping, what you're doing with browses, et cetera, et cetera.
Interesting. I mean, that's pretty cool that you're one of the first people to coin, you know, a New England style IPA, because I absolutely love them. And to be honest with you, I drank the Connect the Dots, and the first thing that came to my mind was Julius by Treehouse, because it's just it's got a lot of the kind of the similar nodes and kind of the understanding and underlying of what they do as well. So again, it's also really cool to know that you have been sort of the pioneer when it comes to that. You know, so that being said, you know, with all the stuff that you're doing, I mean, is there a non-progression brewery that you love?
Oh, absolutely. You know, it's funny. I'm a huge fan of Amherst Brewing Company. These guys in Amherst, they're making great beers, like fantastic beers. Like, I'm super proud of them. They've done a good job, and I'm not super close with all those guys, but I go into, you know, I stop because I work in Northampton. I live in Amherst.
Yeah.
So oftentimes I'll have a stressful day and I'll stop into the hangar right in Amherst. And, you know, I tried Juliet, Jess, you know, there are other IPAs, and I literally can't believe how great they are. They're really, really good.
That's awesome.
But I would say in Massachusetts, you know, obviously Treehouse is a huge one. Trillium's a huge one.
Of course.
But my boy Exhibit A from
those guys are great.
Exhibit A, you know, Matt Steinberg has a pulse on what's going on in this world. You know, he cares more about beer than anybody I've ever met in my existence in the brewing community. And he really, really cares immensely about beer and about, you know, how it's presented to people. And he's one of the founding fathers in this, you know, in this whole age of IPAs. But of course, my idol of all time is Sean Hill from Hill Farmstead.
Yeah. I mean, those beers are just
he's the
out of this world. Out of this world.
When they say it's the best brewery in the world, it makes me very proud, because, you know, when I first started in the 90s, there was, you know, everybody would go to Europe to go try beers. And now Europeans are coming over here to try these great, you know, hazy New England IPAs. Yeah. And we know how to make them here in New England. I don't think anybody else does, you know?
No. And I think we got a monopoly on it because, you know, people try to do it, and there's all these like West Coast companies that are trying to do New England style IPAs, and, you know, you drink one of those and you're like, nope, this does not cut it. Go.
They can't figure it out.
They can't figure it out. Maybe we should go out and help them. But again, it's always good to corner the market here and have people come here. My last question before we get into the review of Connect the Dots is, how did you come up with the can art design? And when you are coming up with a can art design, are you consider what the can will look like while you're brewing?
Yes. When we were brewing these beers, originally we started off with very progressive names, progression names. So they were always positive thinking. So our first beer was called Onward. Second beer was called Upward, which we actually don't make anymore. And then we have a beer now called Further. We had Ascend. So they were basically like all uphill, positive thinking types of things. We hooked up with our distributor, Night Shift, who they hand select their beers. And I believe they only have 12 beers in their lineup. So we have to actually get accepted on probation with those guys. So they like the idea of us kind of changing it up and not having single word names. So my thought was, I'm an artist firstly, and I'm a musician as well. And there's this band that my assistant brewer and I are super, super into, and they're called Car Seat Headrest.
Okay.
I don't know if you ever heard.
I have heard of them.
So fantastic band, like really, really, really cutting edge, really cool. And they have a song called Connect the Dots. And so we were in the brewery, and I was like, Connect the Dots really is a progression, because when you think about it, when you're a kid and you have this, it's 700 dots that you connect, and it creates art. It really, if you think about that as a progression, it's an art creation. So I chose that name to evoke art, and to get it to basically, like, if you connect all these dots, it's going to create art. That's how I chose it. And I wanted to choose a label color that was really dynamic and really different. So I wanted really basically like as neon green as I could get. Yeah. And so that's what we chose.
Yeah, it's a great beer.
Yep. So, and then, as far as label is concerned, like if you look at if you see those three dots right there, what those are is yeast cells. We wanted, when we first started, we wanted to do something that people would recognize, so they could see the actual circle, and they could recognize that as progression. But it was also something that signified going uphill. So so our artist came up, which was really cool in my opinion, of yeast cells that were fermenting, and that's how the logo came about and everything like that.
That is like an incredible mindset. I can only watch your mind just like start working when these things come through, because you have some like crazy ideas that all tie together to what you're looking for and what you're doing. And I think it's pretty incredible. So I say we get to the review portion of it. So usually what I do is, it's tough because you made the beer, but think about yourself as you're coming in as an unbiased outsider who maybe be coming to progression for the first time, maybe went to Treehouse beforehand, went to a few other places. This beer is hazy. It's, you got the peach, you got the grapefruit, you got a lot of different flavors kind of, mashed together. You're our guest. What would you rate this beer 1 out of 10?
Oh, is it the best beer that I've had of all time? It's up there as far as New England IPAs go. So I think so as well. I would absolutely give it a 9. There's no doubt about that. I'm super, like, as far as our beers are concerned, and as far as everything that we've created in this place, this was the beer that really set us apart. Yeah. This was the beer that really kind of took us to the other side. My introduction into using Keveik yeast, Keveik yeast, which is what we play with this beer, it really just changed the whole dynamics of everything. It's, in my opinion, it's everything that I want it to be. So actually, I'm going to give it a 10. It's every single thing that I want it to be. So.
Excellent. I think that's a great review. And as I mentioned at the beginning, I'm a big Treehouse guy. You can probably tell by my glass and stuff. And who isn't a big Treehouse guy, to be honest with you, or girl. So when I first had this beer, I immediately went to Julius. It was something that it reminded me of going into Treehouse and trying one of their million New England IPAs. I feel the same way. I think this is probably one of the top beers that I've had, and especially coming from the New England IPA master himself. I'm going to give this beer a 9.7. I think it's incredible. Highest beer on the rating so far, which is great. You know, I love it. I think it's super playful. I think it's something that you want more of, and it's just an absolute drinkable beer.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
Awesome.
I'm glad you like it.
Awesome. Hey, so Todd, thank you so much for coming on the show. Seriously, it's been great learning about sort of how you came into the industry and how progression has moved forward into sort of where they are now. And I'll hope to have you on the show. And again, and I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Awesome. Cheers.